Welcome back to Boy Band Break, where we encourage you to take a break from your day and join us in some great boy band conversation. As always, my name is Diane.
I'm Chinzia.
I'm Sophia.
And I'm Lydia, a.k.a. Mama Lou.
And today, this week, we have a birthday. June 16th, from Why Don't We, Jonah Morales is 21 years old on June 16th.
Yay,
Happy birthday.
Jonah.
And almost a month belated birthday to our own Lydia, who was May 28th.
Yes. Happy birthday, Lydia.
Happy birthday,
Thanks,
Lydia.
guys.
Aw.
You're so
Belated.
sweet.
She
I hope it
is
was great.
30-something.
Thank you.
Okay.
Please don't say the
Same age as us.
We didn't
Yes.
forget her birthday when it actually happened. We just forgot to mention it on this podcast.
Yes.
Anyways,
Thank you.
welcome back to week number 2 of our Jonas Brothers extravaganza.
Yeah, Joe Bros.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you are joining us for the first time or you just didn't hear last week's episode, last week we reviewed the Jonas Brothers' brand new album called Happiness Begins. So if that is something that you think you might be interested in, then definitely go and check that out when you're done with this episode.
Yes, please.
Today, what we will be doing, as we promised last week, is we will be reviewing their documentary that also came out last week, and it is called Chasing Happiness, available on Amazon Prime Video.
And there is a 30-day free trial if you want to just watch the video and then unsubscribe. So
I'm not that we're suggesting that, but Amazon Prime doesn't give us any money, so
yes,
we are suggesting that.
Yes.
if you want to give us money, Amazon, we're available. We will do advertisements for you.
Send us a PM.
All right. So
I think we should preface the fact that we know very little about the Jonas Brothers
Yes.
before we watch this documentary. So unlike the Backstreet Boys documentary, which is a previous episode, or the Lou Pearlman documentary,
Yes.
where we knew pretty much most of what was happening,
Hashtag
for
Mama.
this one, it was actually like a fresh start for us. It was just kind of like we
That's true.
Yeah.
pretty much know like the basics. Yeah, they did some songs. They were with Disney. They did Camp Rock. They dated a bunch of people. They broke up, and the guys. That's
Period
all we
rings,
pretty much
all
knew.
that
We didn't
stuff.
really know their beginnings or how anything happened. So this documentary, I thought personally, was very good at covering all that
It
stuff.
was very well
Yeah,
done.
that's true.
Very thorough in their explanation of what's going on.
Yeah, and it so like if you don't like if you watch the Backstreet Boys documentary, Show 'Em What You're Made Of, or you watched the Boy Band Con, the Lou Pearlman documentary, and you didn't know all those, like I remember people coming to me after seeing the Backstreet Boys documentary and saying, "Oh wow, I didn't know all of those things about them," and I'm like, okay, so it's good to watch these kind of things even if you're not a super fan, just because like you get a good grasp of who these people are, like at their core. So that's like nice to see. But so I do feel that it's similar to those documentaries in that way. It's just the only difference for us is, yeah, we kind of went into those documentaries having a good foundation of knowledge about those people, and then this one not so much.
I have a question. Are we going through it like step by step, like with spoilers, or are we just giving our opinions?
Spoilers, yes.
Spoilers,
Okay.
'cause
Spoiler alert.
Yes, spoiler alert. Watch it before you listen to this podcast.
Yes, please.
Or
Or
just
don't,
listen.
but, we're going to tell you some of the things that happen.
It was just a very well done, like cinematic. Like
Yeah,
it just
no,
was like
yeah,
a
I
good.
felt like it was really
I just
good.
thought it was like a good documentary. It looked good and stuff. I don't know.
Amazon Prime is trying to compete against Netflix, right? So I mean, like this was a good title for them to pick, and so they obviously needed to do a good job on it. So our story begins at I guess present day.
June
Well, I guess-
2018 in Australia.
Yes.
Yes.
And to preface this, and I think I mentioned this when we were talking about the documentary, like that they were going to do it, that they started making this documentary prior to making the album.
Yes.
So it was supposed to just be a documentary of them kind of reuniting as brothers because they hadn't been together for such a
6
long
years.
time. And then as they were like in the process of filming the documentary, they realized, and you see that kind of if you watch it, they realized that they like were missing something in their lives, and that they really enjoyed being together, and then that's what started this whole Jonas Brothers. I don't want. It feels weird to call it a reunion, but it kind of is. Like if you watch the movie, like prior to watching it, you're like, well, they're brothers. How can they reunite? Like, don't they see each? Like you see, most of us normies see our brothers and sisters and people in our family, even if we're not like super close with them. You see them, you know.
No, don't look at me. Stop.
I'm not looking at you. I'm
Stop.
looking at everyone in this room.
I'm looking at
No,
Lydia.
but,
I know
like,
you are.
even people that you're not like super close, you see them at Christmas, you see them at like birthdays, you do see them throughout the year, but they weren't even seeing each other. Like there was a point where Kevin's like, I didn't see them at Christmas that year. Like he didn't see them for at all ever for like more than a year. So that it is weird considering that they're brothers and they were like so close, but that was like the reality of the situation. So yes, it really was a reunion.
Yeah. So our story begins.
So as we were saying, they were in Australia on June 2018.
Yes, and they were gonna, like Dee said, where they were gonna record this documentary.
Yes.
So
they came together
Joe
to
looked-
reconnect. I'm assuming that's
Yep. So for those who don't know who the Jonas Brothers are, there's 3 of them. So Kevin is the oldest. He was born in 87. Joe is the second oldest. He was born in 89. Nick was born in 92. And then there's a bonus Jonas, if you will, his Frankie. Was born in 2000. So he's 8 years younger than Nick. So there's quite an age gap there. And he's really not mentioned at all.
no. So if you want to compare this to like Hanson-ish, imagine Kevin would be like Isaac, Joe would be like Taylor, and Nick would be like Zach. So that's kind of the order of life.
Okay. Life. So I feel like at the very beginning it started off like, because they show a lot of home videos as well. So
Which is so sweet.
it was very cute.
very
It was
cute.
interesting to see them. So I think they started in Texas when Nick was born, but then they moved to New Jersey. So most of their life was in New Jersey. They had mentioned that they were kind of like the Von Trapp family, that singing was encouraged. So their parents are Kevin Sr. and Denise. And Kevin Sr. was actually a pastor in New Jersey. So that's
The church was 2 doors down from their house.
yes. So they lived there, and he had mentioned that at the very beginning, like 3-year-old Nick had like started singing something, and then kind of like thought about it and like backed up, and then so then they realized that like Nick understood music and really got it. So they took away all his nursery rhymes and started playing Stevie Wonder was the thing there. So they all kind of played instruments and sang throughout.
And they performed in their basement. And it was like very cute, very like wholesome. It's so sweet.
Yeah, there was, as much as I appreciated those like home videos, some of it was like there was like videos of them eating dinner together and videos of like the parents putting them to bed and stuff. And I'm like, why was
Who's
someone
filming this?
videotaping
Yes,
this?
that's a good point.
Like,
probably another family member was
The
there.
videotapes of them performing make sense. But, like, I'm like, who's videotaping them? Like, we're eating dinner together, you know, and we're like, oh, good night, Nick, like, kissing him on the cheek. Like,
I don't know.
who was filming that?
Like,
You were a
he
generation,
was a
right?
pastor, though. So, like, it's kind of fame in its own way. So maybe, like, that was, like, a church video. Like, this is how you treat your children.
I don't think so. I don't think so because
Maybe they're showing other family members.
we got our
this?
first camcorder in 1989, and we took some videos.
No,
and
but
things like that.
it's not that I'm, like, saying they couldn't have had a video recorder. I'm just saying,
But
why
who was
would
recording?
you videotape this footage? Like, what were they trying to get?
Yeah, no, I know. It's-
When it's novelty and it's new, people just like to film anything. So I don't
like
know.
to
So
film
should we go
butts.
through like
Yes, we go
what,
like
what each one of them like was doing? Like they liked music, like Nick liked music and performance.
Yeah, so
young.
Nick was the first. So they talk a lot about how competitive they were because they were brothers. And then Nick was kind of into the musical theater. It said Joe was a goofball.
and then wanted to be a comedian.
And he didn't audition until Nick started getting like more popular and got like a thing on Broadway and stuff. And then Kevin was into gymnastics and pole vaulting and magic. They were poor. They didn't have a lot of money to buy nice clothes. So he was bullied a lot and people called him gay in elementary school. So
And then he started doing commercials as well.
yes.
I also caught that.
Yes, they did that. So it's interesting. So Nick was actually the first one to kind of get into show business. And then because they're all competitive and stuff, they all kind of wanted to do it as well. So that's what I got.
And then Nick got signed first. And then because Nick got signed, Joe and Kevin wanted to do the same.
Yeah. So because they lived in New Jersey and they couldn't afford to live in New York. So at one point, Nick was on Broadway, Joe was in an off-Broadway, and Kevin was doing the commercial. So there was a lot of commuting. So in that 45-minute commute, Nick and his dad started writing songs. So from that, and then Frankie was born around that time as well. So he was a baby, so the mom. So there was a lot of like juggling back and forth. So he wrote this song, and then Nick actually got signed to a record label. Then the brothers were like, oh, that's kind of cool. We kind of want to do it. So they got together, and in 10 minutes, they wrote a song called Please Be Mine and performed it, and then they wanted them all together. So
Yeah, they performed it for the studio executives.
and they're just like,
It's the Sony head.
yes, the
Which
head
I
of
forget the
Sony.
name.
Yeah, so then kind
They
of,
couldn't tell anyone because the dad was a pastor.
yeah, so the dad was a pastor. So because normally if you're a pastor, you want to do only Christian music, and they weren't doing Christian music, they're doing secular music, and they had to keep it a secret. And
Because
yeah.
they didn't want their dad, obviously, to lose their job because it was frowned upon.
Yes.
And for some reason, at the beginning, they were pitched as a punk rock band.
They tried very hard to find a genre.
And
I
then
guess because they were playing guitars.
To be fair, that was like a very popular genre of music during that like period of time. So like
early
as
90s.
as young boys, that was probably the music that they liked. So that was the music they wanted to try to emulate. Obviously, that didn't really work out, but whatever. They were like so young. Like you can't really knock them for that.
Yeah, they're trying things out.
and I was saying for 2 years, they were like doing shows in Jersey and Boston. They would do like 2 shows a day.
At school
They
assemblies
do
as
school
well.
assemblies, and kids were going crazy for them. So it was like good. And they said that they would do so much traveling, they'd have to get up at like 4 a.m. or something because it was cheaper for gas money than it was for them to get a hotel room. So that was basically what they were kind of doing and going around and stuff. Does anybody else want to talk?
No, keep going.
Do you want me to
Yeah,
just
yeah.
talk and then you guys are going to
Yeah,
interject?
we
or-
interject. Yeah.
Okay.
You guys are recapping the movie. I'm not going to interrupt you.
Yes, no,
you are in your flow.
Their first video that went to #1 was called Mandy on
Are
TRL.
we talking about Nick's diabetes after
Yeah.
that? Yes.
Oh, you
remember,
missed a big-
it was 2 years of shows, and then
Diabetes.
I thought that wasn't until way later.
no,
that was during the Now time.
Remember, he was like getting antsy, and he's
Yeah,
like,
it was way before Disney Channel and all
Yeah.
that.
I'm not at Disney Channel.
got the
No, I'm right
diabetes.
there. It says Mandy video and #1 on TRL.
Nope.
Then Nick started drinking lots, peeing, and losing
So
weight.
it's all around the because
Sent
it
to
was,
hospital.
it was all around the same
So he was getting very moody. He had just turned
Yes.
he was like an early teen. He was drinking lots. They would have to stop. He would demand Diet Coke, and then he would have to pee, and then it was just like a lot of stuff
And pizza.
and stuff. So then,
and everyone got worried.
so then they actually did get a hotel room the one night, and they were all kind of changing. And then Joe noticed that Nick looked like skin and bones, like you could see all of his bones, and they're like,
so
"This
he was crying to his
doesn't
mom
look
and dad.
right.
Yeah.
This, like we've been doing this." So they took him to the family doctor, and the family doctor started like tearing up and was like, "Go to the hospital." And then they had diabetes. He has diabetes, and they were already signed to a record label at this point. And then like everyone was freaking out at the hospital, which confused us because.
Well, yeah, I don't really understand because and maybe this is my ignorance about the disease, but like I don't really see diabetes as being like a death sentence. So like I understand that it meant that Nick's life was going to be like a little more challenging than like your average 12-year-old or whatever he was, but like he's not like, oh no, like he it wasn't even like, oh, he's gonna have to be in the hospital and all this. So like they talk about how like after he got it, he was in the hospital for a few days, I'm sure, till they like regulated his sugars, and then he went straight to a show. So it's not like his life was really hindered in any way. It's just he was gonna have to monitor his health and what he ate and like things like that. So like I didn't understand like the devastation that they were trying to make it out to be.
Well, it sounded like Joe was very like he's the more emotional
He's the
one,
more
so he
emotional
got
one,
like
yeah.
upset seeing Nick like hooked up to all the machines and things like that. So
And he passed out.
and he passed out from like
And
seeing
Nick
Nick
asked,
on
"Is he gonna die?"
Well, yeah, but he's a kid because
Well,
he doesn't know.
Okay, here's the thing. Diabetes now is we talk about it way more now than we did back then. I mean, like it was kind of not as known and dealt with. Like now it's just kind of like second nature's like, oh yeah, like, you know, like for type 1 diabetes, we have like the pump you can install in your body, and you're just like bang bang bang, good to go, like life as normal. But I think back then it was still kind of like newish.
But this isn't like the 80s. Like sometimes when we
This is
think
the
of like
90s.
these times, this wasn't even the 90s. This was like early 2000s. Nick
Yeah.
was born in the year 2000. So this is
No, he was born in 92.
Sorry, the bonus Jonas was born in 2000.
Frankie.
Yeah,
Frankie.
But this is like late 90s, early 2000s because he's already like over 10 years old. So it wasn't
Maybe
actually...
they're just kind of upset because it is a lifelong diagnosis, right? There's no cure for diabetes at this
Yeah.
time, especially for type 1 diabetes. So,
Yeah.
and there's like a lot of trial and error at that as well. So,
Yeah, so maybe they didn't really know what to do.
yeah.
And
So-
in America, healthcare is very expensive, and so is
Yeah,
medication.
that's a valid
So
point. Maybe
it's kinda
that
like
also
an
had to do
additional
it.
expense
I guess
onto
that's
them.
true.
You know what? That's
Because
very
there was
true.
the whole, like, as we said, the turmoil about the dad losing his job and all that.
We
kind
didn't-
of
we didn't get to
stuff.
that point yet.
That's about to happen.
Spoiler.
Oh shit! Sorry.
Okay.
But potentially losing his job.
Yes.
So I mean, that's like an illness in America is a bit of an expense.
Yeah, so you know
sorry,
what?
yeah.
That's a very valid point.
guess
I didn't
maybe
even think
we
of
don't
that.
consider it to be as bad here because it's not like, oh,
free
how
healthcare,
how will I pay for my medication? Like that's not an issue,
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You know what? That's
okay.
very-
You know what? I just literally was like, they're trying to make this more dramatic just for the movie, which is fine. But yeah, I didn't think of that point.
Okay.
You're welcome.
So yeah, so they were like obviously very concerned about Nick, but they were also concerned about losing the record deal because it's very hard to get one, and once you miss your chance, right?
And
And
a
they
lot-
don't want to cancel
so
the show.
Nick's like,
And they're very like testy, right? Like record label executives are like, you sneezed.
I
like
don't,
you."
I don't want anything. Oh, there's a little bit of a scandal. Look, I'm just going to drop you instead.
Yeah, like
so
so you don't want to give them an excuse to drop you.
So they just decided not to tell him. Nick's like, okay, let's check out of the hospital. Let's go to this big showcase. So they went to it, and it was great, and they were signed to a label. So then, kind of after that, they couldn't really keep it a secret from the church that they were doing this type of music, and apparently the hardcore crazy Christians are. So even though the dad had worked at the church for 10 years and had been build the community, and they were there every day, and they lived 2 doors down from the church, the church elders or the people started like going against him and essentially asked him to be removed. So
He resigned.
he ends up resigning. So
The
because
whole community turns on them.
so all
The
their
entire-
friends,
like, that's
everybody,
so crap.
which
Like,
is
How
I
do
feel
you lose your friends?
I feel like that's very anti-Christian. So you
Right.
you go on and on about loving all these people, but then like they do something which they weren't even doing anything terrible. Their sons were playing rock music. Oh my goodness, kick you out of this
Think of the children.
come on. So it
Come
was
on,
kind of
guys.
Everything was dropped. They had
it
to
was
leave the house.
it was so yeah, so the obviously since the church owns the house, they were also kicked out of their house, so they had nowhere to live. They were $90,000 in debt because the dad had taken all of the savings they had for their college to kind of pump it in and help support them for this music thing. So
credit cards were
so
maxed
the kids
out.
didn't know. So the parents tried to kind of like keep the kids from knowing about like the church getting it all up in arms. But then obviously when he resigned, and he said the dad was so choked up he couldn't even like read his resignation. So they're like, okay, we got to move all of our stuff out. And then at that exact same time, the record label Columbia dropped them.
Yes.
So
So the house belonged to the church, I'm assuming?
yes,
Yeah, okay.
yeah. So luckily they had
Was it a grand?
the chief of police for Little Falls gave them a house, like a 2-bedroom house, rent free for a while
was
till they
very
got on
nice
their
of him.
feet.
Yeah. it's
So I guess he was part of their community or something. But essentially, yeah. So which kind of sucks because I guess they were dropped by the record. So I guess they were like, okay, we're gonna resign from being a pastor so we can focus on their music career, and then the record label drops them. So it's like both things happen at the exact same time.
double whammy.
So it's like, man, maybe we could have just stayed as the church, right? So I don't know. They don't really dwell on that. Is that where they go look at the church, or is that later on?
Well,
That's later on.
at that point in the movie, I think that's when, because the movie kind of flip flops between like the past and then present time.
Yeah.
Like they insert clips of the boys like in the present day, like sort of just reflecting on those moments from the past, and then they obviously insert clips of them talking about those times, and then clips of like the actual home movies that they have. So it might have been the point where like where they go and then they say like they're not even allowed on the church property, like
Yeah, they weren't allowed. So they were at the outside of their house. They're like, oh, maybe they're going to go in, but they weren't. And then they were kind of outside the church. And then I don't know if it was the production guy or somebody from the church who said, we can't be here. You have to get off the property type thing. And then like it just started raining at that time.
Instantly.
It was kind of interesting. We're like, God's tears, man. Coming down.
God's tears.
So anyway, so now they're kind of semi-homeless. Like they have that house there. So now it's pretty much just, so before they were just doing the shows for fun and it was like something really enjoyed doing. But now they had a lot of pressure on them to actually provide for their family because the family has sunk all their money into them. They have nothing. The dad has no job. I'm assuming the mom didn't have a job. She had a baby to take care of and things like that. So they were kind of just like,
We got to do shows to make money.
just doing more shows, hoping they're getting money, like hoping that their team wasn't going to leave them and stuff like that. Playing everywhere, like including malls. And there's this clip of them
Oh my
in a
God, that was
shopping mall,
hilarious.
and the old mall walkers walking by and like booing them and like plugging their ears, and it was just very sad,
It was very sad.
It
but
was
also
sad,
funny.
but also
but
funny.
also very hilarious. So then, after a little while, Disney ends up contacting them.
I thought
Do you
it
have
was
anything
the
else?
Hollywood Records deal
that-
first. Oh, okay.
Disney owns Hollywood
Oh, okay,
Records.
gotcha.
So they contacted them to move to LA and sign them to Hollywood Records.
Thank you.
Can I just get that phone call? Like, come on, man.
Ring! Hey, Lydia, it's Mickey Mouse.
You want to drop down in Disney?
Yeah,
Yes,
so
please.
Mama Lou just fits into the Disney brand so well.
Damn it.
You can class her up a little.
Damn my potty mouth. Okay, sorry. Continue.
So around that time, so they had a bunch of songs. So they kind of were in a house type thing, and they were recording like songs a day and stuff. So that's when they did the year 3000, which, as we've mentioned in a previous episode, is actually a British band.
Oh, yeah. You know
Busted.
what? And I was waiting for them to mention that in the movie, and they never do. They act like it's just their song.
I was just like, not your song, guys. Busted did that song, but that's fine. And they made a more like clean version of that song.
yeah. Like, I mean,
And
it's
now
not
it's a
a
Joe
complete
Bro
cover,
song.
right? But
It's pretty much the same
Yeah.
song, except a couple of parts. But
very weird.
Great,
But
great
nobody else
granddaughter.
knows that,
the
right?
triple-breasted women are not in their version.
What?
Yes, so there's other
nobody
things.
else
On the
knows
Disney
that.
Channel version?
Shocker,
Surely
I
you
know.
just...
So anyways, so they made a video for that song, and it actually sounded like they made the video with Columbia Records, and
Yeah.
then they got to take the video with them for some reason, which makes no sense, but whatever. So then Disney's like, cool, content, and they just kind of started throwing it up on their channels. So meanwhile, at this time, so they were still doing a little bit of acting and stuff, but somebody approached Joe to do Camp Rock. So they're like, cool, but like, you know, we're just starting the band thing. I don't know what we're going to do. Da da da. So
They didn't want to separate the boys.
they didn't want to
Yeah,
separate the
so-
boys. So then the dad's like, can we put the other guys in it? So then they're like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever. So then they decided that, okay, obviously Joe was like the main character and they had the other guys there as well. So they kind of flew up to Canada. I think they said it was about 4 hours north of Toronto, like some woods in the middle
yep.
of nowhere. And that was with Demi Lovato, and they recorded
Probably the Muskoka area.
Probably, I would
Yeah.
assume so. So Camp Rock, they did that. Meanwhile, they didn't know that this song was getting like good rotation and stuff, and people, because I guess they're away for probably a couple months to film this movie.
Probably, yeah.
So then they had a gig when they came back at the Texas State Fair. So this part was very like shocking and impressive.
Yes.
So they didn't even know that they were that big yet. And then the promoter called them and said, hey, there's a huge traffic jam, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, okay, whatever. Like, no, it's from Texas to Oklahoma. Like, okay, I don't have a map, so I don't actually know how far away that is, but that sounds impressive that
It
the
is,
traffic
yeah, it
jam
does
went to
sound-
another state. And so they actually had to take a helicopter in and fly into this event.
That's pretty cool.
I thought
And
so, yeah.
there was like 50,000 people there.
That wasn't a crazy amount of fans.
Like just footage. I don't know. It's good. It's good stuff. I was very impressed by
Yes,
that.
I was as well.
And they were even more impressed that these people actually knew their songs, because they're just like, oh, maybe they're just here at the fair or whatever. But they're like, people were singing along,
Singing
and,
the songs back to them.
and they're like super impressed.
They're
by
all
that.
there for you guys.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool.
And another thing that was cool was Johnny Wright. We saw Johnny Wright in there as well.
Yes, we did. Actually, it was really funny because it was just like a really quick clip.
It was like a 2 seconds.
2
long.
second
I
clips.
don't
I'm
know how
like,
you did it.
it wasn't even 2 seconds. I was just like, Johnny Wright's with them, and they're like, what? So we had to like stop
like,
the
yeah,
documentary
it is.
and rewind, and like literally Johnny Wright is with them. So I don't know if he helped manage their career at some point too.
Man is a legend.
I feel like he is. So
I feel
All
like
the secrets he must have.
those
like,
who
he
are
was
not
in
familiar with
charge of
Johnny
everybody.
Wright, he was with New Kids, with Backstreet Boys, with NSYNC.
With Lou.
He was with Lou Buddy. He's doing stuff with In
Not like
Real Life
Sex
now.
with Lou.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't
maybe,
think so.
Maybe he was.
Okay, yeah, that's true. I don't know that.
Yeah, so if anybody knows anything about Johnny Wright or knows of him and wants to be interviewed or whatever, that'd be
Like
great.
everything, every band,
New Kids.
Yes.
crazy.
So I was also, before that part, I was going to mention that they were very excited about their MySpace.
Oh my god, that was hilarious.
So,
So
and they,
cute. They really embrace the social media.
yeah, so they were kind of at the beginning of social media. So like, like the Backstreet Boys and all them, they didn't really have that, but they were like right on the
Had
cusp.
the interactive CD that one time.
Well, it wasn't really interactive. So
No,
the
it
MySpace, they were all excited when they got 100 friends.
1,000 fans.
And then they had 1,000 fans and they were super excited. And then what I thought was interesting, which they would do, is they would do 15-second videos. So like a prelude to Vine, and they would have that on YouTube. So they'd make like little funny videos, which you were like cracking up at that
Oh,
one.
the table has turned. Oh, I was dying.
So yeah, so the two of them like had a table, turned it around. The other brother comes in and is like, the tables have turned. And when they relaunched their career again, they remade that video. So I was like, and I hadn't seen the original. So I was like, oh, this is funny. I like this. And then everyone's like, this is brilliant, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, oh, okay, they're remaking another one. So that was pretty good.
Awesome.
Yes. So then from that, then they were still with the Disney Channel, and then they were on a Hannah Montana episode.
Yes, that was fun.
And that's where they're like, Nick fell in love.
Oh.
With
Miley Cyrus. And they started to, he started to write love songs and understand the feeling and all that stuff. So they kind of mentioned
They
that.
didn't explore the relationship very much on the documentary, and I wonder why.
I'm assuming because he's married now.
Okay, yeah, maybe. I'm like,
I don't
did
think
something
so.
sinister happen? Like,
I don't think
so.
I think it's just probably because they were like really young and like
But
he was supposed to be pure and he probably wasn't.
when did the
and-
purity rings come into play? Is that later?
They were always in play. It's just as they became more popular, it became more of an issue.
Ah, okay.
Because everyone noticed them in interviews.
Yeah, I don't know what
And
part that was
the
at.
X on the hand.
Yes.
X on the hand.
Yeah, it was
Straight
like
edge.
with a permanent marker. What's it called? Straight edge?
Straight edge.
Sorry, straight edge.
No
and
drugs,
purity
no
rings.
alcohol, no sex. That's what that.
Really?
Yeah.
Did I
do
miss
remember
that part of the movie?
It-
They
it
didn't talk
flashed.
about it.
It flashed very
They-
quickly, the hand.
Yeah, but they.
But yeah, it's like a thing.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, back in our Serial Joe community, that was.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So another fun part I thought was kind of cute was in 2007. They were in a car on their way to a gig, and Kevin was talking to Danielle, who
Oh my God,
ends
that
up
was cute.
marrying him.
So cute.
And telling her how tickets are going to be available, and then the other two guys are 100% making fun of him the entire
Like
time.
roasting him.
Oh my gosh.
And they were just
As boys do.
They're like, say this, say this.
it's like this, and then he's trying to be all whatever, and then he hangs up the phone. He's like,
Stop
"Don't look at me when I'm on the phone with Danielle." Blah blah. They're like, "Oh, she's your wife." But that was, I think,
Turns out to be
2007.
his wife.
Yeah, I think they got married in 2009. I think they said so. No, they didn't say
funny.
that. I
I
looked
like
it up.
that.
So cute.
Very cute. Again, very cute clip to have. But who was filming that?
I don't know.
Here's Kevin talking on the phone to his girlfriend. Let me whip out the video.
I feel
recorder.
like it was
Like,
very helpful for making a documentary
know.
on there.
Some of this footage is just so what were they trying to record here?
Well, I think it's because they were doing those 15-second videos on YouTube and stuff. Maybe they just
maybe they were trying to
Like
record.
at that time, that makes more sense. Like the putting the children to bed, that makes no sense.
I
They
guess.
just want to share
some
content.
people don't like to take pictures. They want to take videos. I don't know. Maybe
I don't know.
maybe Frankie was filming everything because who knows?
Baby though.
Not in 2007.
Okay.
Oh, God. Oh, he would have only been 7. Okay.
Yeah,
So I don't
exactly.
think he's working the camera there.
It's so bizarre.
Can you just film your older brother, sweetheart? It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't think
Dad,
so.
you never know.
It could be the dad.
Or the mom.
I'm sure that there was maybe a bigger purpose behind some of these videos that you're not seeing, and this is just the clips that they pulled out, so it seems really out of context and whatever. But I'm just like, who was recording this and for what?
Yeah,
But
yeah, fair.
it's fine. It makes for a good documentary because, like,
It
if
really
you're going to make a
does.
documentary about
Yeah.
my life, I don't have all that kind of footage.
No.
And like anything I record is like funny, like I'm recording my nostril or something. Like it's not like it's not like quality content.
That's definitely
Yeah,
something
that's
to put in a documentary.
Yeah, like,
Just breathing at me, like it's like ugh.
Oh my god, you're hilarious. The next fun thing I saw. Feel free to step in at
There
any
was
point.
also
or tuck
thousands
it.
of fans at the Virgin store for a
Yes.
CD signing, and they thought, oh, okay, the first year, there was
so the
like
first
5
year-
fans, and then the second year there was like
30
or 50 fans,
Yeah.
and then the third year it grew to 20,000 fans.
Yes.
Close down the street. And
Yeah,
all
so
that stuff.
And there was barricaded.
the reasoning behind that is that at midnight it was their tradition to go to this Times Square Virgin Mega store to buy their own CD.
Yes.
So that was it. So yeah, you're right. So first year was 8 people, then 30 people the second, and then that 20,000. They didn't even realize like how ridiculous it was going to be, and the streets were shut down, and
I thought that was pretty cool.
it was pretty
Yeah.
cool. I was at midnight. Like that's pretty cool. Like you guys have camped out for CDs, right?
Yeah.
No, Diane has not camped out for CDs.
Did we? We camped out for a
We
wristbands.
camped out for books
Not
and
camped
stuff.
out, but we sat.
We
up
would
in
go.
the line.
Yeah, I feel like we went early to go get CDs and stuff. Anyways, I just think that's cool.
I don't sleep on the streets.
That's
We
right.
slept on the street.
No,
though,
yeah, we
for
sleep
New
on the
Kids
streets.
Block.
Remember that one time where it was so cold we started hallucinating? That was
I
fun.
could see that.
Was that the Chris thing?
That was the Chris Kirkpatrick thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was good.
a lot
That
of
was
fun.
good times. Anyway, so yeah, super huge amount of people, whatever, amazing. So at this point in the documentary, it flashes back to present day, and they are in Australia doing a drinking game.
With questions. It's very sweet, but then it churns.
It was never
Jar.
sweet, I don't think. I really think the intention was always to, like, air out their
no, like
grievances.
sweet that they were there together. That's part.
Oh, you mean the Australia part starts out
Yes.
street.
Yes.
I get it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're all like adults now. They all have like a huge shot of alcohol, and they're like, "There's this like honesty game we're gonna play."
They have all these
And-
questions in a bowl or cups or whatever.
And I mean, obviously, they knew they were being recorded for this documentary, so they like played it on purpose and like wrote questions about, intentionally to like air
Yeah.
out their like brotherly problem.
Your regrets of the group, of the brotherhood.
Festivus for the rest of us. So in it, I know the one question was, I can't remember what the question was, but
Regrets.
What do you
regret the most? And they said season 2 of Jonas Brothers
LA.
TV
No,
show.
Just Nick said that.
So he said it was a mistake and it stunted their growth. So essentially, Disney.
That's the LA one, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So essentially, what they said was that like Disney was like, "Hey, let's make this TV show," which was like an exaggerated of their own personalities and stuff, but like they were like a boy band in high school or whatever, and like
And the purpose of this was to like, you don't have to work so hard while you're on tour. This is still working for you. So it was like it made good business sense to
Oh,
do
for
it.
sure.
like
But
to keep you relevant, to keep you on the air, let's do this thing.
yeah,
But Nick felt that stunted their growth because now they were wasting their time filming this show instead of working on new music
And
and,
it
doing
wasn't
things
really
like that.
them. They said at one point too.
Yeah, it just came like a comical ridiculousness. Now, this made me feel bad because I actually very much enjoyed Jonas.
You
LA,
watched
and
this,
I
yes.
thought it was very cute. But yes. So anyway, so Nick started becoming frustrated with the band, the creativity, and he decided that he wanted to do a side project. Because that was the thing. They're like, we're not going to break up the band. We're just going to do side projects. And then
They thought they could be Backstreet Boys, but no one can.
no one can replicate the greatness that is BSB.
the more entertaining
right.
part, which I don't know what part this happens because you didn't write it down, but like Barbara Walters was interviewing them.
Yes.
And then she literally asked them if he was going to
And then
Justin
Nick's
Timberlake.
face was amazing. Oh my gosh,
And I was
Nick's
like-
face.
So she was like, is anyone going to Justin Timberlake out of the group type
She
thing?
didn't say
She
Justin
did.
Timberlake.
She
mentioned-
did say
No,
Justin
she
Timberlake.
said, is anyone going to do what Justin Timberlake did? She didn't use Justin Timberlake as like a verb.
That's
Well, it
our
is a verb.
because it's our verb.
Yeah.
But anyways, I was dying at that part. But anyways, so Joe was like, "No, of course not. Like if we do anything, it'll just be a side project, whatever." But you can literally see Nick's face being like,
Like looking away, like
Like,
I'm gonna do it
"I'm
on
not
my
going to
own."
comment or anything." I was just like, "What is going on here?"
girl, we know that face.
Not really because we don't know them, but yes, we're
Well,
just
you know
like,
the face of like trying to hide it. You're like,
You don't know, but I'm going to do this.
So so there was kind of like a little bit of a break. So then Nick ends up getting a job on Broadway, How to Succeed in Business Without Even Trying. So he moved to New York City. So this is his first time actually living on his own and
Away from the family.
Away from the family. He's in
Away
New
from
York
the
City
boys.
doing his show and enjoying that. Meanwhile, Joe was like, all right, I'm going to go out and meet girls. And I can't see what this other word I wrote is, but that was pretty much it. He was just travel. He was going to travel and meet girls and was like, okay, whatever. And then he decided, well, since he's doing that, I'm going to make an R&B pop record. And he's like, I'm so famous that it will do well. And it didn't do well.
It was a failure.
He thought just because he was dating Taylor Swift that the fame would
Was
just
that
roll
at the time of that?
Probably.
They didn't mention that on the
They
documentary.
didn't, but
Intentionally, do you
maybe
think?
Taylor didn't give. They were like, she was like, you are not allowed to use my name in this.
Well, you know
Maybe.
what? Honestly, because they like were in the media so much, I feel like everyone kind of knows
Everyone
all the
dated
girls they
Jonases.
dated, right? Except for Kevin. So at that time, when this other stuff was happening, he's like, all right, you know what? I don't need to do another side project. I'm literally just going to take a break and relax. And I am going to spend more time with my girlfriend. Her name is Danielle, and she was a hairdresser from New Jersey. So just like a regular person. And I think, did they get married at that time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they got married, and then it was like he was, and then again, because nothing was happening with the band, somebody contacted them to do their own TV show called
Reality show.
Married to Jonas. So he's like, okay, cool. Like, we're literally not doing anything. Why not? The other guys
We
are
need
doing
money.
So whatever. So they started doing this show. But what ended up happening is they wanted Nick and Joe to be on the show. So
But they didn't want to be.
they didn't want to be there, and you can just see like, so they didn't want to air their
Awkward.
grievances and stuff on this show.
And that's what ended up happening.
So yeah, so they ended up getting back together, the band, but they weren't happy when they got back together. It wasn't
Yeah.
like, it was kind of like, okay, well, we kind of got forced back together with this TV
Yeah,
show,
they literally said we just got back together because we felt like we had to.
but they didn't feel like they had actually like,
There was not the
Grow-
same success as there was in the beginning.
I don't think, did they even end up going on this tour, or did they break
No,
it up?
they canceled it.
What they said was that they released a few songs, but they weren't getting like the traction that they were used to getting. They thought that like putting the name Jonas Brothers out there and putting out these songs would just mean like instant success, like it had a few years back, but it just like wasn't. And then they had signed up to do a tour and release an album and everything, but basically they didn't. Well, Nick didn't want to.
Their
It
heart
said,
wasn't
they
in
were
it. They
going
didn't
in
feel
3
it.
different directions.
They were resentful of the fact. Oh,
hated each
yes,
other.
that part. Was that part already happened?
They hated
What
each
part?
other.
Where Nick essentially like blames Kevin.
No, that was
No,
after.
that was later.
Oh.
That was later. Okay, so essentially what happened
Yeah,
is
that's
that like
later.
Nick was not feeling so he went on a car ride with Pops, and then Dad's like, "What's wrong?" And he's like, so he's like, "Okay, let's go talk to your brothers."
Oh yes, I do have that 2-hour drive with Dad.
Yes.
He's having anxiety, and he's like, you know what? So he kind of went in. Yeah, you're right. He went to his brothers, and he's like, oh, I'm sure they already think they know what's happening or whatever,
But
right?
they didn't.
But they didn't, and they were
Shocker.
blindsided. And so Joe's like, essentially, Nick said to them, like, the band is over. I want to do stuff without you. That's how he took it.
and then
So-
Joe shut down and didn't talk at all in that meeting.
And then Kevin was like all awkward. And then,
Yeah. So then they more or less officially announced that they're breaking up. But Disney and Hollywood Records is like, listen, you need to do these shows or these radio stations are never going to play Jonas Brothers again.
and they'll never play your solo music.
yeah. And all
So
this
we
stuff.
need you guys to do this jingle bash.
So there was like a few shows that they were like contractually obligated that they had to do. And then that's when...
Oh, and then this is
Kevin
the
was
worst.
like-
So this is the worst. So
He
then they
cried.
said, like, we need your band to be there. And he's like, okay. And then they're like, you know what, Kevin? We don't actually need you. It'll just
Who
be...
said that? That confused me.
He said, he didn't say who. He just said, my understanding was that Nick was going to do his own music and that Joe was going to do his own music and there was going to be no Jonas Brothers music. So they just, I don't know who they are.
Yeah, that
but
was the part. So I don't know if it's the
was
record
management?
label, management,
Disney?
or the brothers.
He said, they said, Kevin, you don't really need to be there.
And even on the flyer, it just said Nick Jonas and Joe Jonas.
Yeah.
It didn't say Kevin. So
So-
Kevin's like, okay, they don't want me to be there, so I won't be there. And
Because
then
they were not playing any Jonas
It wasn't
Brothers songs.
Jonas Brothers. It was
Yes.
just
the two
Nick and
solos.
Joe were going to go fulfill their contractual obligation to perform at this show
Right.
because they didn't want to get like all sued and all this other stuff.
Yes.
And then it ended up just being a Jonas Brothers set with just
Yeah, they
Nick
kept
and
playing the whole
Yeah,
set.
without Kevin.
without Kevin. So then
was
Kevin
very
felt
sad.
like a punch in the gut. Like, what the heck? Like, why would you kick me off of this thing?
Because then
That
that,
was very
looped
sad.
back to the game where it was like, why did
Like
you
present day.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes. Present day, the drinking game that they're playing and this honesty thing.
questions, yeah.
And then one of the questions was, why did you perform those Jonas Brothers songs without me? And then, so then Joe and
And
Nick
then, oh
like
my
had to
gosh.
answer this in the present day. And then in the present day, they're telling their brother like, oh, we thought you were holding us back.
And our faces,
I
were
was
in
like-
shocked. We were in shock.
You know that meme of that like orange-haired guy with the mouth open? I was like,
We were like, oh my gosh, why would you say that?
I was just like in
We're all
shock.
in shock.
And I was just like,
I wish we took a video of it, but like we were all like,
We
what?
couldn't believe that.
I
they would say that.
tried to take photos and videos, but then they saw me and then they're like, oh, and then I was like, now it looks like you're acting.
Oh,
Forget
it was
it.
just
so,
like,
wow. We
it
just
was
couldn't
like,
believe it.
honestly, I thought Kevin was going to start crying again.
Me
like,
too. I was just
not that he
like-
had cried before, but it was just like the way that it was like a punch in the gut, and I wasn't even him, and it just
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
like was like kind of like, well, you know,
It
what was
almost
the
felt like, why
actual
would- why would
reasoning?
we
Because he
watch
was
it?
with
You,
Danielle.
like you checked out. Your guitar music was shit, and
I know.
and like, it wasn't
They
like
didn't
that.
say that.
No.
Your guitar playing was off. You're checked out, and like essentially, like he was very much into being the family man, and he
And
wasn't
they were
in
saying
the
that
band.
because they were young, they didn't understand how he could put Danielle above the music
Yeah.
because they hadn't experienced like that type
true
of
love,
relationship
yeah,
before.
because their first
Right.
love was music.
Right. So being so young and like, you know, relationships and girls being kind of fleeting to them too.
Yeah.
They didn't understand how Kevin would be like, okay, yep, that was great, cool, high five, great show, and then go home. Like, didn't want to hang out with them and go out and like, da-da. So they felt that he wasn't as committed to the band and that
and
he
the
was
brotherdom.
holding them back.
Yeah,
But obviously he wasn't, and now they obviously understand.
So
And now
yeah,
it's-
so
it
now they're
balances
all
it
married,
out.
and they're like, oh, we understand. Like Joe was like, oh, I didn't know, like what I would do to spend an hour with Sophie. Like I understand now what you wanting to spend time with Danielle and stuff like that, and you're
but at
whatever.
the time they didn't. So yeah,
So then after that,
So
it
I
was just
guess
kind
it
of
was
like a punch in the
good
gut,
that
and then Kevin.
they
So
ended
that
up-
was the Christmas that they didn't spend any time together. And they like would see them, but they never spent time together as the three of them. And it wasn't until Kevin's first daughter, is Valentina the first, or was there another one?
No, I think Valentina's the younger one.
Something, I want to say her name starts with an A. I can't remember
I
right
know
now.
it-
E.
Oh,
Never mind. Okay,
I don't know.
All right,
It's
I'm
fine.
off.
Shinzia will look it up.
Yes. So
Anyways, so then this is then when, because Nick talks a lot. This is when he starts talking about, because he was the one that initiated the breakup of the band, that everyone thought that he would be so happy in his like solo career and everything. But he wasn't, because he was like struggling a bit like in his solo like ventures, and he was just like really secretly like sad and
The
all
song
this stuff.
"Happy When I'm Sad."
Happy when I'm sad. It all makes sense. I get it
Makes
now.
sense now, yeah.
Alina is the name of the first daughter.
I was right. Yeah, it starts with an E. Or
no,
I.
it's an A.
Ah.
Alina.
Okay.
See, I thought it was Molina, but I'd obviously heard that wrong.
Alina. She's currently 5, and Valentina is currently 2. Apparently.
Aw.
Anyways, so yeah, but then because Nick has such like a passion for the music, and so he like his drive, like what they talk about throughout the whole movie, his drive for success is like crazy, considering how young he was through all of this. Like I don't know, he's not even 30, right?
Yes. No, I think he turns 30 this year. Was he not born in 89?
92.
Oh, yes, 92. No, he's not.
So yeah, he's not even 30, and his work ethic and like success driven mindset is insane. But anyways, he was like really down on himself for not being super successful, but then eventually he hits it big with this Jealous song, and then
With DNC.
No.
No,
Lydia.
That's the other
that's
brother,
Joe.
buddy.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Nick solo.
Right.
and then
Yes, sorry.
a couple of years after that,
And then very sexy. We were like, woo.
Oh yeah, like he was like doing some model like GQ stuff. Girl,
And then you were
Mama
changed-
Lou approved.
And you changed your answer from Joe to Nick at that point?
Oh yeah, because I have like a reference card. I don't know the Jonas Brothers very well, so I'm not going to read this reference card because
Yes,
it's probably
yes.
offensive.
Okay,
but I know who they are now.
And she
Anyways.
decided.
always a
So
plus.
then, in present time, she's decided that she's a big Nick fan.
No.
She
Joe
still likes
Joe
Joe.
is
Joe.
cutie.
Okay.
She only.
But at that point,
There was just that one point around the jealous when he's like has the shaved head and he was like really jacked, like really muscular.
And like that like wet T-shirt. Oh, boing.
that's when she started to like him.
Yeah, that was.
Now
beautiful.
that he's lost,
Disney, please call me.
now that he's
They'll
lost,
call
a bit of
you a
muscle
restraining
mass,
order.
she's not as interested anymore.
Oh my God, you're hilarious.
sorry. It's that Lou Pearlman in me. I feel like I channeled his spirit.
So then Joe did like the DNC. Did we talk about that? And then
Yeah.
he was excited that he could like color his hair different colors and be wacky and be fun because they say that Joe has always been the goofball of the group. So whatever. So we're good. I've run out of notes. So continue on with the.
Oh, so more or less this is the end of the movie. So then this is what they were all doing. And then, yeah, like you were saying, when the older daughter, Alina, was born, this is when they kind of all first like saw each other again and like whatever, she kind of brought them back together. They were seeing each other a little bit more. And then I guess they decided that they were going to... Did you say she was born? What year?
I don't know.
I think
Well,
Nick,
she's 4 or
Nick
5?
was like, "Oh, I think we should get back
She was
together."
born in
Do
2014.
you remember that part?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nick's
So-
the one who said, "I really miss playing with you guys." And
Yeah.
then-
So yeah, so there was a good moment like where Nick was saying like he really enjoyed being on stage and stuff, but then he would be like constantly looking over to the side to see his brothers and realize they're not there with him. So
Yeah, it
that
was a
was
nice
kind of
moment.
like, and now the two other brothers started getting in real relationships and stuff, and they start
Because they didn't
realizing.
believe him at first.
Yes. Oh, yes. And then they talk about how, yes, then Joe and Nick like found their respective wives and they understood everything that Kevin was going through like back then.
Yeah.
So they have
I
a
feel
new
like there was like a
perspective
4th of
now.
July party they were all at because they were all wearing like weird clothes and
Yes,
stuff.
but that wasn't. I feel like the 4th
Oh,
of
that
July,
was in the 2018.
Yes,
Sorry,
yes,
that was more
the
recent.
4th of July party is just when they're reflecting on these
Yes.
moments and they're finally showing like Sophie and Priyanka. So like, yes, but like. That's just the scene that they're showing you as
Yeah.
they're having these thoughts and reflections and like
It
voicing
didn't happen
this
at
over.
that party. They're not
Yeah.
over like cocktail wieners. Like, hey,
Yeah, so pretty much anyways now they've decided, okay, this is cool, I really like this whole brother vibe, we're back together as being brothers and it's like a good thing and let's go forward with this as a group. So
Happiness begins and they record a new album and now here we are.
ready to go on a tour.
yeah.
When does their tour start?
I have no idea.
We're
That's
going to a
great
show in
question.
August.
In
It
the-
starts
is in the
before
movie,
August,
just
so it's
everyone
good.
knows Roller Coaster is in the movie.
Ah, yes, that song.
What part?
I want to say the beginning and the end.
Oh.
I also appreciated when we were like, where's Frankie? What's going on with Frankie? And then in the credits, they actually showed Frankie, and he was saying how he's like their number one fan,
knows all the
and he knows all the lyrics, and he knows all the backstage stories, and he knows all this other stuff. So, Frankie Jonas, if you would like to be interviewed,
If you find this podcast some way, somehow, please contact
and we have not
us.
turned you off by listening to it. On like literally, that's like my dream is to like interview the siblings of
Oh, okay.
famous people
In a
and see how their
general,
lives are.
gotcha.
I'm just so curious about that. But anyway, so he was there and it was
We should
entertaining.
interview Eddie. Sorry,
Yeah.
that's off
Yes,
topic.
that is
but
off
still.
topic.
Siblings are fun to interview. I saw one interview once with all of Bruno Mars's sisters, and they
yeah?
were asking them like, "What do you think of the song and music video for Gorilla?" And they're like, "Ah." They're like, it's my brother. It's so gross. But they're like, it's a well-written song. But like, he has like 5 sisters. It's so cute. Definitely watch the interview if you can find it.
So it looks like there's like a couple one-off shows like in June and July, but
Oh,
the
yeah.
tour doesn't actually start until the beginning of August.
Okay,
So
cool.
I'm excited to see the concert.
Yeah.
So yeah, in Florida it looks like.
Mhm. They have 2 dates in Toronto in August, and then they're coming back again in November as well. So
Excellent.
Yeah.
Glad you don't have a condo
So that
in
and then
Florida.
it's all through August and September.
So
Cool.
overall, I feel like the documentary was good. We learned a lot of things.
we definitely did.
Definitely entertaining. Very well written. Very well, story well told. Well done.
Yes. And Kevin's hair got way better by the end, so I guess that really helps
That's
to
the
marry
most
a
important
hairdresser.
thing of
so.
this documentary.
And even though like we kind of told you the whole movie via podcast, I still think that
You need to watch
you
it.
should go watch it.
There's a lot of funny little clips. There's a lot of interesting things. There's a lot of more in-depth conversations.
Emotion cannot be captured by audio alone.
And remember, there's a free trial right now, so 30 days, just cancel that
It's not
subscription.
actually right now. It's
Shocking
at all
moment.
times.
You need to
but-
watch
at
the
all
shocking
times.
moment.
So there you go. Amazon Prime, and it is called Chasing Happiness.
Excellent job.
Does anybody have anything else they want to say?
All right. Well, thanks for taking a break with us, guys.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.